The City of Southport Board of Aldermen Budget Workshop, May 9th, 2022 is now called to order. Thank you, Board, for being here today. Thank you in the audience. Thank you, staff, for being here and streaming this live for our constituents. I would like to call on Reverend Alderman Lowe Davis for our invocation, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance.
Let us pray. Almighty, most loving, most merciful God, we thank you and praise you for the blessings that you bestow upon Southport, its citizens, all who visit here and all who work here. We ask you today to guide us in your wisdom toward good and right considerations and decisions for this city. Amen.
Thank you, Alderman Davis. I would just like to start off with a few brief comments. If we don't look at where we've been, we don't know where we're going. So last year, we met on Earth Day, April 22nd. And so that theme was, how do we achieve a just balance among economic, social, and environmental needs of present and future generations? It is necessary to promote harmony with nature and earth, and that still is true today. And then I mentioned about how we celebrate Earth Day and our live oaks in Southport, the creeks, the maritime forest, the salubrious breeze. And then I said, the City of Southport continues to work on our budget for the next fiscal year in terms of how we pay for the necessary services and infrastructure improvements that will meet the expectations of our citizens. This requires strategic planning and innovative revenues for funding. And I think that still sums it up, not only last year, but for today. I mentioned we have a long list of projects that we are trying to complete. We're trying to bury our power lines. We're still doing that. We need money for that in this year's budget. Our yacht basin is with the Cape Fear Council of Government right now. We're trying to get that planned, in particular for safety issues there. City Dock, I said it was near completion, and that was half true, and now it will be completed. Taylor Field, hurricane preparedness, our fire, our EMS, our police, capital improvement plans. So these are some of the things we looked at last year, and they are just as true today. So we look at the different pots of money from where we obtain revenues, whether it's from grant writing, from the state, our ad valorem taxes. We know that the property value will be reevaluated, but we need to move forward now in terms of our budget and what services that we need, and our employees, that they have a competitive salary, and that we retain our employees and that they're happy to work here. They want to come to work. We have a general fund, we have an enterprise fund, we have a capital fund, and we have to track incomes and expenses. We have our sales tax revenue. We need to look at that. We know that's done well and will continue to do well because of our tourism. And Southport is a destination, and I can assure you, and I think any of you who've been in our city the last few weeks, we are busy. Capital improvement plans, again, Alderman Allen, when we campaigned in 2019, I learned that term from him, and I appreciate his insight into the budget process and the insight of all the aldermen. They bring different experiences to this. Many of you have run businesses and have great insight. So again, we'll look at our streams of revenue. We look at the services we need to provide. We look at the employees that we need, in terms of, do we need to add police? Do we need to add people in our finance department or whichever department, and we want competitive salaries. So I'm just happy to be here, looking forward to listening, excuse me, to the discussion. And I thank you again, you all, for being here. So item E, approval of the agenda. I'll entertain a motion. Alderman Allen, and second by Alderman Lombardi. Any discussion? All in favor? Okay, agenda approved. Thank you. Item F, I'll call on City Manager Gordon Hargrove for his opening remarks.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, Board of Aldermen. Thank you for all being here today. We've got a lot of work in front of us. We have some challenges, but we have some opportunities to really craft a strong budget this year. So I met individually with each one of you within the past week to let you know some of the obstacles that we faced and the path forward in addressing them. So I'm just going to reiterate some of those issues that we're facing, and then we're going to jump right into it. First of all, in order to keep up with our other regional municipalities, we're asking for a COLA increase this year. It's very important that we retain our talent that we have and be able to attract the new talent that we need to continue to provide the high level of service that the residents of Southport not only are expecting, but quite frankly, they're demanding now, and I don't blame them. Secondly, we have a need for some new positions in order to allow us to continue to craft a high-performing organization, increase our efficiency, and deal with the workload that we're currently facing. Thirdly, we're going to be looking at something that we've not had to in the last 4 or 5 years. As you all know, we've broken off we've separated the fire budget from the EMS budget. So the current model was not sustainable, so we feel like that the model that we have built for them by separating the fire fees from the EMS fees is something that will allow us to be successful moving forward. However, that's going to come with significant funding, which we'll talk about here in just a little bit. So these are all challenges that we face, but like I said before, we have options and opportunities to really build a solid budget this year. There's going to have to be a tax increase. At what percentage that will be up to your discretion. Secondly, we have available money to come from the fund balance. So it doesn't all have to be related to a tax increase. It doesn't have to all be related to a transfer of money from the fund balance. It can be a blending of both of those to come up with the money that we need to balance this budget. So I've had these conversations with all of you over the last week, so we're going to drill down a little bit deeper with the department head ask, so to speak. So let's get right to it, and the first up is going to be Ms. Heather Hemphill, our Director of Parks and Recreation.
Green light, but it's on now.
I'm not hearing it.
Hey. Yeah, that one's a little bit better. Okay, good morning. My budget is pretty much straightforward, with kind of in line like with last year's. In the sense that, you know, we're just maintaining and continuing our programs. We are going to be through with the city dock. So proud and so glad to say that, as of June the 30th. And then we are, as y'all know, in the process of starting the Preparedness grant for Taylor Field, which I think that's a separate, its own entity. So mainly, I mean, like, you know, our salaries and stuff, retirement, all of that, you know, is dependent upon, you know, how this board handles that situation. I think with, I mean, uniforms and protective gear, most everything that has gone up just because of the cost of everything nowadays. You know, our uniforms is just because shirts are a little bit more expensive than they were pre-pandemic. Departmental supplies, you know, the cost of awards, shirts for our events, you know, basketballs for the basketball league, stuff like that. It's just, we're kind of just putting it in there because of the elevated cost. I will entertain any questions that you have if you see something. I think, you know, with our vehicles, we are going to be leasing another 15-passenger van. And so that's why you see the $12,000 to the $15,000 in capital outlay in vehicles. So that, we're still waiting on our van for this year. And then with this new one, that will give us 3, and we will rotate our bus out of line as our primary transportation. So that is the reason for that increase. You know, we've separated out Kingsley Park. That's the pier, you know, where I know Gordon has kept you guys in line as far as what's going on with FEMA, and you know, changing a little bit up of the work that's going to be required in that, and capital buildings. You know, again, we're going to try to do the cross braces, and then there's a $13,000 city match for the kayak launch. We did apply or send in the pre-application April 22nd to the Department of Coastal Management, and part of the requirement of that is we have to pay or match about 25% of the total cost that we're asking for. And so you know, the total cost when we spec'd it out was around, it was $150,000, but that does include not just the kayak launch, but you've got to have the walkway over to the kayak launch. So, and it is, of course, ADA accessible, and that does include 2 kayak launches. So our portion would be the $13,000. So that's why you see that in capital outlay, $5,800.
Heather, can I ask? So the kayak launch, so we're estimating $150,000.
Yes.
Can you break down how that's being funded? We pay $13,000. We get a grant for how much, and the marina pays, what is it, 25 or 50
right,
or whatever?
And that's true. I forgot to include the $25,000 that the marina has will be donating to that project, and so that will take us down to our part is $13,000 plus their $25,000. I think, what was that, 38? Yeah, okay. So that is why we have to do our $13,000 plus their 25 will equal our 38, which is 25% of the total cost of the project. The rest of it, if we get the grant, is funded. I mean, it's a federal grant that's passed down to the states. It's called a CAMA Water Access Grant, which we have a lot, you know, we have lots, and they're noted by the signs that say public access. So,
When will we hear about that
well,
grant?
we sent in April a pre-application, and if the Department of Coastal Management thinks that our project is worthy, they will send us an application to actually fill out, and that I think is the end of May, beginning of June. I think it's due in July if we get asked to do that. So hopefully by the end of June we'll know if we're allowed to apply for it. Yes, ma'am.
Testing.
Did I break it? I promise the remarks will be worth waiting for. Oh, Lord. All right. This better? Okay. Thank you, Alana. Kayak launch. I looked back through the minutes, Alderman minutes, back when the controversy was percolating over the sale of the old sewer plant property and the issue of an offer of a permanent easement for a kayak launch and so forth. And at the time, some of the aldermen and the city manager said that the marina had promised to pay half the cost of the kayak launch. How did we get to only $25,000?
That I can't answer. I was not in those talks.
Okay. You were not one of those people.
No,
Alderman
I understand.
Marcellus.
I can't answer that question, but what I can tell you is contractually, the contract that was signed said that they would give $25,000 toward it. That's what I can tell you, is that would be what we would be going by.
Well, dang. Okay. My next question is, can we start to consider hybrid or electric vehicle leases at this point? We're looking at a van. We're looking at, I believe, other vehicle leases, renewing or getting new leases. Now's the time, I think, all things considered, that the city starts to lead with electric vehicles.
I have no problem
I see the city manager
doing that.
rubbing his chin there. Have we gotten any quotes for what an electric or hybrid van would cost versus a gas-powered?
Departmental-wise, no. We have not looked at the electric route, but I know our finance director has been talking with this process. Has electric ever come up? Okay, so that would be something we would need to look at.
I certainly hope that we can do that before we finalize this budget.
I think the electric vehicles right now are priced crazy. And I think that a few more years, that price will come down and we'll get involved then.
I think we would know if we explore the quotes and cost analysis, the whole process, not only the cost of the lease, but the vehicular and the maintenance costs versus the electricity cost. I mean, in other words, what would be our ultimate bottom line, and to compare. And it would be worth it for this city to be taking the lead in being environmentally conscious.
Okay, now I'm going to step in and answer that question. So I think that's a very good idea, And with the direction of the board, we could certainly pursue something like that. I think logistically speaking, to put that in this year's budget is probably not workable. We only have a limited amount of time before this budget has to be passed, but we can certainly start moving down a path to make our fleet more electricity dependent. It's not just a matter of leasing the electric or hybrid vehicles. We also have to have charging stations in town to be able to do that. And again, logistically, I just don't think we have that capability yet. Although I think moving forward, it is something, if the board wishes us to proceed in that manner, that a simple vote by the board to give us direction to do so, be more than happy to do so. I just don't think we can pull it off for this year's budget.
Melanie, could you go over your transportation needs again? You know, you said with the vehicles you have and the vehicles you, I'm sorry, Heather.
I was like,
Could
okay.
I
Yes.
know,
We have a bus. We got that bus in 2004, 2005. And so theoretically, it says it can transport 54 elementary age kids, but that's not true. And when you transport adults, you know, that lessens. And then when COVID hit, you know, we were having to have only one per seat. And so anyway, we got a van, a 15-passenger van, about 4 years ago. And we leased in last year, or this current budget, a 15-passenger van. We have not received it yet. And so the goal was it would take 3 15-passenger vans to replace what we could carry on the bus. And so with this 23 budget, we wanted to add that third van, and then the bus would not be our main means of transportation. Now, I will say, but it's not my decision, but I would think hard before we sold it, just because it is a very good evacuation vehicle, and we have used it before for evacuation purposes. When the Caroline caught on fire New Year's Eve, we were evacuating seniors to Brunswick Senior Resources. The fire department always has it stationed at headquarters when the emergency operation command centers open there for evacuation purposes, and they've used it for that too. So I would not recommend that that the city get rid of that. You know, if we weren't in a hurricane alley, you may want to think about it, but I think it's still got use in it.
Heather, I have a couple questions. For utilities, it says Fort Johnston, and then under utilities for tourism, it's got the Garrison. Is that separated?
That it is separate. It's always said Fort Johnson, but my utilities, my 3,300 is all of my buildings, but it does not contain the Garrison house. Okay. It contains any power that we pull on the loan, but no, that should just straight up be utilities, and that's all of my buildings and parks.
And then the other question that I had is that it's been a while, I think, since the rate committee has reviewed fees and rates. And we have a meeting, the rate committee has a meeting scheduled for May 17th at 2.
Okay.
So I'd like to ask if we could look at that and then to see where they are
Sure.
and that sort of thing.
Yeah,
So,
the last time
if you
we
could-
changed our rates was before, I think it was 18, right before, or 19, right before we, COVID went into the pandemic, so certainly would like to look at that.
Okay, awesome, thank you.
And we've made, significant improvements in our facilities too.
This may be a Melanie question, but you're the first one up. Under all of these, where it has proposed for salaries, is that based on the hope to COLA increase? So that's already built into these numbers? Okay, thank you.
I know, just so you guys know, because we've got new members on the board, the Parks and Recreation Department, we operate with 2 full-time employees, myself and Maureen Moore, and we have about 5 part-time employees. So we are a small department, but we do a lot. So with the staff that we do have. And
I wasn't questioning the number. I was just trying to make sure that as we go through all of these, I know what we're talking about. We're not adding another 8% later on. It's already built in.
I am from in the community. I hear nothing but good things about your department. They love the basketball in
Yeah.
particular. I know every year that is just, and during the winter it just brings those kids together, those families together, and then they become friends
do.
and that type thing. They invite each other to each other's homes, and it's just such a wonderful event. The fishing tournament. I mean, all these things. They're no less important than anything else that we do, as far as I'm concerned. So I thank you for that. I know y'all have a small staff, and you do a lot.
Thank
If
you.
you can have an impact just on one child, you've succeeded, and I know you have. And I know the legacy from Joe Medlin and Mark
Yes.
Sutherland, and you, and I'm grateful that you continue that. And you know that you have my support in Parks and Rec. It's a wonderful program for a small city
Yes,
to
thank
have.
you.
So thank you for that.
And I do encourage board and staff and public, please, come to our events. It is a true sense of community. And the mayor was talking about basketball. I mean, it straight up is a weeknight event, and we are packed out, and they're good games. I mean, and these are the kids that you are going to, like the ones that you're reading about in the newspaper today that play for the high school and go on to play for college, started right here on Atlantic Avenue. So, there is we do try to foster a family environment. It's good entertainment, and it's free. Yes, ma'am. It's all right.
Grant for the dog park. It's on? Is it working? Okay. Do we have enough money in that's going to cover the incidentals that are, the necessaries, such as the poop bags, the trash cans, the personnel to pick up and clean up and regularly maintain the park?
Yeah, I was going to say, Kate may be discussing, Kate has applied for a grant to supplement the Partive grant, and, talking about the ground cover and stuff like that. With Partive, It is mainly funding the cost to build it. The trash cans are included in that. The dog waste bags actually come under my departmental supplies, so they're already factored into the budget. And no, we do not have personnel that can be out there the entire time that it's open. And then as far as our maintenance crew, building and grounds will be the ones that are, they'll put that on the rotation like they do all the other parks. So did that answer your question?
Yeah, I a regular user of the Salty Dog Park, which is Oak Islands, off of Bill Smith Park. They have a Friends of the Park who kind of supplement the city's public works in maintaining it, keeping it. They have a nice big sand pit for digging dogs. And as the owner of a digging dog, I appreciate that. But that would be Kate, right?
No, not necessarily. Kate has written a grant to supplement what the part of grant is. So, and she can talk about the amenities. Mainly we were talking about ground cover, right, Kate? Yeah, basically, not just grass. Something, grant for dog specific. So, but yes, the rest would come through Partive, and then, come from our operating budget. Yeah, well, yes. That's another, we can talk about, we can take it to committee and see how we feel. I have tons of people that want to donate a bench, but, right now I'm telling them, not yet. I'm putting them towards the brick walkway outside of the garrison, because currently we are not building any new benches and naming them, but we will need that. And I have plenty of people that call me on a daily basis that want to do that. So I figured we would take that back to the Parks and Rec Committee and then bring that back up eventually to the board, because the board's the one that does, had said to not do that right now while we figured out, were we going to sustain the same benches, or were we going to change materials? So, yeah.
So if no one else has a question for Heather, that's all she has. We good? You ready to move on? Okay, thank you, Heather.
Thank you.
Gordon, I got a question for you.
Okay.
Who is responsible for installing these electrical charging stations for electric vehicles?
I've got to fully disclose to you, Alderman Lombardi, I'm not 100% sure, but we can run that down. I'm actually sending the guy who coordinates our lease program the questions now about, the capability as far as having electric vehicles, the electric charging stations and that sort of stuff. So maybe by tomorrow I'll be able to provide you with a little more information.
All right, I was just curious. Thank you.
Hey, Gordon, you may want to also ask a question about interoperability. So if you own a Tesla, you're only going to go to a Tesla spot. If you own somebody else, you only go to their spot. So depending on how many vendors we have or how many vehicles we have, they're talking about a unified, a connector that will connect to all of them. But to my knowledge, that's not there yet.
Most all of these electric vehicles are universal with the exception of Tesla. So Tesla has a proprietary tech and I don't think we're looking to buy Teslas. Just a
That's a very good discussion. So next up will be our Fire Department Chief Charles Drew. Welcome, Chief Drew.
Melanie, I'm having trouble finding these things in here. Can you tell me where the fire department is? They don't seem to be marked.
And we'll give everybody an opportunity to find this spreadsheet before we start, so.
It's 10
Says account number 11, fire, at the top under description. The first number is 406-265, 406,265. That's Chief Drew's new salary.
Are we ready, Mayor? Is everybody good? Okay. Thank you for allowing me to come this morning and talk to you. We appreciate the Mayor and the Board of Aldermen for all your support over the years. We have some new members on the board, and just so you understand, I want to start with just a little bit of historical information about the Southport Fire Department. We were the first fire department in Brunswick County. 1893 to 2015, Southport Fire Department operated on a complete volunteer basis. In October of 2015, the Southport Board of Aldermen decided to hire a full-time fire chief. In November of 2015, Southport Fire Department and Southport Rescue Squad merged together. At that time, they were two separate entities, two city departments, and they merged together in November 2015 under Mayor Robert Howard's administration. At that time, a full-time deputy chief was added to the merger to help with the rescue operations. 2017-18 budget, a full-time fire clerk and a fire inspector was added to the fire department's budget. 2018 and 19, we budgeted for 4 full-time firefighters. 2018 and 19, Yopon Beach Fire Department dissolved, and Southport Fire Department took over the responsibilities for Caswell Beach and Yopon Beach's rural district. This was a very successful merger at a great savings to the citizens in those districts. Our current staff, what it looks like right now today at the fire department, we have a full-time fire chief, we have a battalion chief, we have a fire clerk that answers the phone, mans the door, and assists with reports and assists on the ambulance when needed and the fire truck. We have a fire inspector that does fire inspections for about 600 commercial businesses. We have 1 full-time fire captain, and we have 3 full-time firefighters for a total of 8 positions at the fire department. We have approximately 50 volunteer firefighters. Some of those volunteer firefighters also serve as part-time firefighters that help man 12-hour shifts, and I'll explain that in just a moment as well. We have about 27 volunteer EMS members that sign up and happen to help cover the ambulance. Southport Fire Department has never missed a fire call. However, the past year has been very challenging to cover the schedules to make sure that we continue to keep an ambulance up 24 hours a day, and the fire trucks cover 24 hours a day. Just to give you a little statistical information, Southport Fire District is 38.3 square miles. We have 86.58 road miles in our district, and we cover a citizen base of about 15,000 during non-seasonal times. That swells and sometimes it triples during tourist season. Our ISO rating is a Class 3. We have over 600 commercial properties in our district, and we have a required fire flow by the Office of State Fire Marshal when our pager goes off and it's a structural call, a fire alarm or a house fire. We have to provide a required flow of 3,000 gallons per minute. So that's the reason why we have to have the number of fire trucks that we have. We are asked that question. Yes, sir. Okay. The question was a normal tanker flow. So we have a 2,000 gallon tanker at headquarters, engine 373, and if it goes on a fire, it carries 2,000 gallons of water, but it can only flow like 1,250 gallons a minute. That's rated by the pump that's on the fire engine. So if you calculate 3,000 gallons a minute, it's going to take 3 fire trucks to be able to flow that amount of water within a minute.
Thank you.
Okay, and that just kind of gives you an idea when people ask you, why there's 4 fire trucks showing up at Walmart. That's the reason why. It's a minimum requirement by the state of what fire flow we have to have, and that comes from the square footage and the amounts of homes and businesses in our district. We have a headquarters station, and we have 3 substations. Just to give you an idea of our coverage, how do we cover our calls? Our career staff, we have 1 full-time firefighter 24 hours a day at headquarters. Our administrative staff works Monday through Friday and responds to calls after hours. So our fire volunteers assist right now in covering shifts, 12-hour shifts, 7 days a week to supplement our full-time staff. We have 1 volunteer that signs up at headquarters for a 24-hour shift, and we have 2 volunteers that sign up at Caswell Station for 24-hour shifts. Our volunteers for a 12-hour shift is paid $125 an hour. That's less than minimum wage per shift for a 12-hour shift. Did I say $125 an hour? Yeah, let me correct that. $125 a shift. Excuse me. I misspoke. In addition to that, our fire volunteers that are not signed up on shifts, they receive a $25 stipend if they respond to the station for a call. So if they're not signed up on a shift, full-time staff do not receive those stipends. As far as the 2022-23 revenue budget, the budget that you see in front of you, a week and a half ago, the fire fee rate setting committee met at fire headquarters, and we have secured the funding for what you see in the fire budget. Yes, Southport Fire Department is a city department. However, we have our own funding mechanism. So that, what you see presented before you, the funding has already been secured for that by the fire fee rate setting committee. We have secured $1.8 million in fire fees. Also, revenue in that budget is a $150,000 grant from the state, $75,000 donation from Duke Progress, for a total of $225,000 in revenue. And then $70,000 for miscellaneous revenue, fire inspections, fire recovery fees, donations, for a total of $2,170,184. One thing that we have done this year, the EMS budget has been separated and does not reflect the amounts in the fire budget. So you have 2 budgets before you. You have the fire budget and you have the EMS budget. We separated this so that you can see exactly what it's costing to provide each service. This budget reflects, the fire budget reflects a $530,000 decrease from last year's budget. I'd like to zero in just for a few minutes on the main items in this budget that are being requested. In the fire budget, 5 full-time firefighters are being requested in this budget. For that reason, we have identified some problems with part-time salaries exceeding full-time salaries and the number of hours that are being worked by the part-time or the volunteer staff. To cover these 5 full-time firefighters, part-time salaries have been cut from $332,000 in last year's budget to $91,000 in this year's budget. So that's where the salaries are going to be able to come from. So 5 full-time firefighters have been added. This will give us, if this is approved, will give us 3 full-time firefighters on an A, B, and C shift to cover 24 hours a day. 2 firefighters will be on the first out engine at headquarters and 1 full-time at Caswell. That will be supplemented by 1 volunteer. Now, just so I can give you an analogy of how, so that you can get this in your mind, the mayor is the chief. Alderman Mosteller, Mayor Pro Tem, is the assistant chief. And the other aldermen are captains and lieutenants, and all of you are volunteer. Each of you have a volunteer division under you. Madam Mosteller has the planning board. She oversees them. Captain Lombardi has the beautification committee. That's his volunteer group he oversees. He can't really control them, what they say, what they do. Captain Carroll down there has the 4th of July committee. He has some control over them as his volunteers, but he doesn't have full control over them. But then you've got your city manager. He's your full-time staff. Guess what? You can tell him what to do. He has to be accountable. If you tell him you have to be to work at 8 o'clock in the morning, he has to be there. I'm giving you an analogy so that you can think of what we go through with volunteers. And I'm not downing volunteers, please. And I'll tell Elliot, please don't say that I'm downing volunteers. We need our volunteers and we appreciate our volunteers. But we don't have as much control and accountability over our volunteers as what we do our full-time staff. That's why it's important and necessary that we add these 5 full-time firefighters, because they will be permanent staff. They will be there at 8 o'clock in the morning. They're not going to come in, and there's not a lot we can do for a volunteer that comes in 15 minutes late, if you understand what I'm saying. So that just gives you an analogy. Captain Davis here, she's over the forestry committee. She can say, go plant a tree. They might not plant the tree just the way that Captain Davis wants her to plant the tree. So that kind of just gives you an idea. Each of you are working with volunteer organizations, and you see the frustrations sometimes that you go through with the volunteers, but it's totally different from our full-time staff than what we have. So that's one reason why we've noticed, we've identified some problems with our part-time staff and our volunteers, and some of their salaries are higher than the full-time staff. So we're kind of gotten out of balance, and they're working more hours. So that's the reason why in this budget we've identified those problems and we've put those full-time staff in there. And it's not a want, it's really a need today.
Could I answer a question?
Sure.
Just for clarification. So prior to you making me smarter the other day, I was under the impression that the reason that the monies that came from the people who were making more than the regular employees was because they're showing up on fire calls. But that would take a whole lot of calls at $25 a pop to get to that rate. So in essence, most of that, or a big hunk of that money, actually comes from the you referred to them as part-time people who work 12-hour shifts. And so it wasn't necessarily just that they were showing up at the firehouse all the time.
Exactly, yes, sir. They're signing up for, some of them are signing up for 35 and 40 shifts a month.
Mhm.
So you do the math, and that adds up how many hours that they're pulling and getting.
And your budget then has reduced that pot of money and
Exactly.
put it over to the pot of money for the full-time.
Yes, sir. That is correct.
Thank you.
That is correct. Yes, ma'am. As far as our operating line expenses throughout the budget, there's very little change. You will see some reduction in the fire side because some things have been moved over to the EMS budget. Very little capital outlay in the fire department's budget this year. We have $30,000. We have $10,000 reserved for turnout gear replacement and $20,000 for some technical rescue equipment. And then as far as our debt services, we're paying $125,000 on fire headquarters, and we're paying $95,000 on the tanker and $171,000 on the 2 engines that were just purchased. So in the EMS budget, we're asking for the 1 full-time captain position to continue to be funded that was approved in last year's budget, but we never did hire that captain's position to conserve and reserve money. So we're asking that it be, it stay in the current year's or the proposed year's budget, that we could hire that person come July to help oversee with EMS operations.
Excuse me.
Yes, sir.
These additional employees, do you anticipate bringing them from the volunteers? Not that it matters to the budget, but where do you see those people coming from?
Well, any of them would be allowed to apply, you know, and we do have an application process. We have an interview board. They do have to do agility testing, and they have to do skills and a written test, and then all of that is tabulated together for a score, and then we hire per the score. But yes, they would be allowed to apply for the jobs.
A couple of questions.
Yes, ma'am.
I'll back away a little bit. I'm not going to talk about an electric fire truck. Surprise, surprise.
However, I have looked at one. I have. We just came from a conference, and they unveiled one of the first electric fire trucks. The city of Los Angeles, California has purchased it. It was on display at the conference. It's very expensive, but we did look at it.
Oh,
And
interesting.
they're willing to come to Southport and show us one.
Well, thank you. We can show them the old one.
Yes, ma'am. That's right.
The staffing model, is this standard for a fire district of our size, serving the size of our population, our road spread? By that I mean we are multi-level here, obviously, with full-time, part-time, volunteers, kind of a hybrid between part-time, full-time, and so on. Is this standard for our, are there other cities that do it differently and possibly better?
The majority of municipal fire departments in our county are basically all full-time staff now. They don't rely a lot on volunteers. Majority, some of our neighboring municipalities to the north of us and to the east of us, most of them have 30-plus full-time employees. So we're still under that, being supplemented by our volunteers, and I'm very grateful for that because we have been able to save some money by continuing to have a good volunteer base.
We've done a cost analysis of the hybrid that we have versus full-time.
Yes.
Done a comparison.
Yes. Myself and the city manager have worked on that. Yes, sir. Yes, ma'am.
My second question is about EMS and the budget separated out from fire. Have we thought about whether we as a city want to keep the EMS service or whether this should be regional with the county?
That has been discussed in previous years. It's always been my opinion that we would want to keep the EMS, and I'll tell you the reason why. Because when it comes down to getting a county ambulance in Southport within 4 minutes, if you are in cardiac arrest at your house, you have 4 minutes. And I'll give you a prime example. We just had this on Caswell Avenue with Mr. Pat Dane. And I'm not saying anything I shouldn't say because he sent us a letter acknowledging this. And I have it and I can share it with you. But on Caswell Avenue, there was a cardiac arrest, and our folks were on scene within 2 minutes and started CPR, and complete turnaround, and he's going to walk out of the hospital and live a normal life. So that's the key, is you've got 4 minutes if you're in cardiac arrest, and Dr. Hayden can tell us more about that than I can with his profession. And the county cannot put a paramedic unit in Southport within 4 minutes.
And Chief,
Is there any thought to or possibility that the county would station a unit here, given our size and how much of an area we are now covering?
The one problem with Southport is we are at the end of the county. So there is a unit stationed at Caswell Beach, a paramedic unit. There's a paramedic unit stationed across from St. James, and there's a paramedic unit stationed at Boiling Springs. All of those units seem like they would be close to Southport if there was a call. However, with the demographics of Southport, those units are constantly on the move wherever the calls. If there's 5 calls that go out in Shallotte, they move those units to where the calls are going on. They're constantly moving all over the county. For the past year, every day we have been without paramedic units in the county. There has been so many calls because we have a 30% increase in call volume that paramedic units are depleted every day. We hear an all-call go out on the radio every day stating that all paramedic units are with patients, long emergency room waits, and so as far as ambulances, sometimes our ambulance and St. James's ambulance are the only 2 ambulances available in the county because those paramedic units are tied up. So you've already got a stressed system with the county. They don't have enough paramedic units on the road. They don't have enough people to man their paramedic units. You've already got a stress system. So if Southport were to deplete our EMS service and rely on the county, we're just going to have more of a stress system. And I feel like, this is me speaking, that we would put our citizens in harm's way.
and let me add to that, Chief. Not only is it that we can get there within 4 minutes, I mean, that's huge, but just the transports that you do to our hospital to take patients back to a facility to be able, sometimes you'll go to a call and the paramedics will say, y'all can handle this. Sometimes it's a call just to help someone get back in bed. They've fallen. They've been checked out by our crew and they're okay. Sometimes they'll call the ER and I'll talk to that crew. So I feel strongly, whether you're a physician or not, as mayor and as a board, you know, to offer a life-saving quality of life service like that. If we can do that, we should. And I feel strongly because the paramedics, there are just not enough of them. Now, let's say the county invests in a large paramedic unit, then that may be, and have one here, but I still think we would need our local EMS because not all calls require paramedics to transport. And as Chief said, the paramedics take patients to the hospital that patient needs to go to, for example, straight to New Hanover. So these units are out of the county, or they may go to Grand Strand. So I think it's important. It's been a long tradition of volunteerism of EMS in Southport, wouldn't you say, Chief? I mean, for years now, and you know the names of those people that came before, Doug Leggett in particular. So I think we until a dramatic change is made in terms of the county, I really feel like our EMS is one of the strong departments, like our fire department. So thank you for that. And thank you, Alderman Davis, for that discussion, because that is an important question in that regard.
Yes. Yes. Yes, sir.
So we're saving about 530,000 in the fire budget. So the combined reality of these budgets is basically what was budgeted for 2022.
Yes, sir.
Chief, I have two procedural questions for you.
Yes, sir.
And it's, the first part is just for education of people who have not grown up with this type of system. So last week, I think it was last week, the fire board met and passed the fire department, not the EMS part, fire department part, in reference to the fire board fees and stuff like that. And so then, theoretically, this board could null and void, let's say, the 5 positions, technically. And I'm not sure what the county commissioners can do, but they can do something else. So you have the fire board who votes for it, then it comes to us to approve because you're a Southport Fire Department. And then the commissioners do something else. I'm not sure what they approve. So people should understand there's 3 actually political bodies that are involved in this.
Yes.
And trust me, I'm not going down the road of canceling the 5. The second part is procedurally, right now, based on what the fire board did, you've maxed out on the ability to raise any more money from the fire board fees for next year, absent some type of legislative function, which I'm not sure whether it is the county that can raise the fire board fees, or is it the state legislature that can raise the fire board fees
The county would have to request the state legislature
to do it. See, the ultimate decision is with the state legislature.
Yes, sir.
And then there's a potential of some other legislative actions by the county, perhaps once again through the state, to raise other types of fees to do that, but none of that is a given.
Right, that is correct.
So, absent that process taking place, if next year you came before us and said the best practice would be to hire, I'm just going to say 5 more people, the city of Southport actually couldn't give you the money to do that because it has to come right now from the fire board fees. Is that a correct statement?
Well, the city of Southport could give us the money with us being a city department. Other municipal departments in the county, like to the north of us, the town of Leland, they collect their fire fees, but then their town supplements their budget by several $1 million.
So legally, they can,
Yes, sir.
you can do that.
Yes, sir. That
Okay.
is correct.
So that leads us to the third thing, which has really nothing to do, well, has to do with your input, but has to do with this board. There's been discussion in the past about actually having a legislative package that would be built out in enough time. You can't show up on game day at Raleigh and say, you're starting your legislative session and here's our package. That has to be massaged through a whole lot of people before so you get it through committee. And this, to me, would be one of those things that the city of Southport should be teaming up with you and potentially all the other fire chiefs that are out there to look at what does 2023 look like. And so I'm going to be asking later on that we actually not just talk about it, but actually do some action for a legislative package to prepare us for 2023, because there's a lot of things coming next year. As the mayor said, all of our houses are going to be reassessed. We'll have to figure out what that is. There's a request now for us to raise taxes, our own taxes this year, in order to float the boat down the road because of all of the things that were never done in the past decade. So I just want to let people know that we're going to be going down that road, and we'll need your input to do that.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. And the last Fire Chief Association meeting, which was a couple of weeks ago, the fire chiefs of the county have created a committee within the chiefs to start studying funding mechanisms and to make some recommendations to the County Board of Commissioners, because several of the fire departments are getting to the place where they're maxed out. So those things are being looked at now.
And thank you for that, but I still think it's important that the state legislators realize that their local politicians are in favor of doing this, as
Yes,
opposed
sir.
to the guy who needs the money is asking for the money like you guys are. It
Yes,
should be a
sir.
collective process. Thus, there'll be less opportunity for pushback in Raleigh, because everybody understands we're all on the same page.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
I appreciate Rich bringing that up, and just to amplify it a little bit. So if the fire district fees are essentially function like an ad valorem tax, correct?
Based on square footage, not evaluation. So
Okay.
if your tax value goes up, the fire fees do not go
Okay.
up.
Any other questions for Chief Drew?
So,
I'm sorry. I had just a couple questions. I had other ones, but they've all been answered. One of the things that in other municipalities I've seen, firefighters also have EMS training. Is that the case of our firefighters as well?
All of our full-time staff now, with the exception of one, and he is getting ready to get into a class, we are dual training them, yes. And when we hire the EMS captain, they'll be dual trained for firefighter purposes, so we can claim them on ISO. So we are pushing that very much so. And that kicks in, like sometimes we have 3 calls going on at one time, EMS calls. So our ambulance will be out, the full-time staff, the fire clerk, that's why I said before, she helps on the ambulance. She'll jump an ambulance with the fire inspector. He'll jump an ambulance, and they'll take a second call. And then sometimes there's a third call, and myself, being an EMT, I'll first respond and go on the third call sometime, just so that we have some, presence there, and some medical training is started before an ambulance gets there. So yes, we're dual training. We're making sure of that.
And then, and of course, I'm very much a volunteer-oriented person, but I guess do you have metrics for your volunteers? I know they're all trained and they have to have a certain amount of hours and they do all of that, but do you have expectations for how many house fires they participate in a year, or how that all works, so that you're investing in volunteers?
Yes. Yes, as far as training, when they join the department, they have a period of 18 months to receive their firefighter 1 and 2 certification with the state. And as far as calls, they're required, if they're signed up as a volunteer on the fire side, they're required to go to 20% of the calls in a month. Or if they can't reach that because of jobs or something, then they have to pull 10 hours of volunteer duty at the station, where they come, sign up at the station, and they're there doing chores for 10 hours. They have to do that once a month if they can't reach their 20%. Does that answer your question?
I guess I'm trying to make the distinction between needing part-time people, you need them for 12-hour shifts, and volunteers are sort of on call.
Right, that is correct.
Okay. I just
That is correct.
trying to, because on the EMS side, it calls on part-time salary, doesn't say volunteers on the EMS
Right.
side.
And we have, on the EMS side, we don't have as much volunteerism as we do on the fire side. It's just a total different animal. So most of them are there signing up for shifts on a monthly calendar is what they do. So that's why that distinction is made there.
Do all volunteers have the opportunity to answer every alarm?
No, ma'am.
How does
Not at
that
all.
work?
Well, I mean, just like we have volunteers right now that are working full-time jobs, so if there's an alarm that goes out, they can't leave their job. Now, we used to have several companies in town that would allow When Pfizer was here, they allowed their employees to leave Pfizer to come to calls. And Dan Harrelson's grocery store was there. He would allow people to leave and go across the street to the fire station because Dan was a fireman, so he allowed his bag boys if they were on the fire department. But we don't have a lot of that anymore. So if they're not available, then they can't respond.
And just for the record, up until this year, and I congratulate you and the city manager for doing this, this board only gave you $35,000 a year to operate the medical side, and it costs a lot more than $35,000 a year. Well, it's good that we've split that all out now.
So I would like to weigh in on that right now. That's a great point. So a year or so ago, I've had communication with all you individually about that the current model for the fire and EMS was not a sustainable model as we move into the future. When Finance Director Trexler and myself sat down to try to do analysis on the fire department and the EMS, and we started looking at these combined budgets, really, we couldn't get our heads wrapped around of it because there was just not enough information and detail to it so that we could make a great decision. So the first step in this process, and I've communicated this to all of you, that we needed to split EMS from our fire department so that we can really track that and do a little bit better job of where that money's going to, and that's what we've done. So we really think that this is the step in the right direction to make the fire department EMS sustainable. However, it does come at a cost. When you look at that EMS going from $35,000 a year, we are now looking at funding it with almost $250,000 a year to make it whole. We have to do that because we have a revenue shortfall in that particular department. So when we get down to the end of these presentations and we start talking about tax increases and fund balance transfers, this is a big driver of that. So I want you to be aware that is something to consider when we get there.
Anyone else? Any further comments? Any further questions? Okay, thank you, Chief, for a great presentation, and thank you for your service in your department. Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, can we take maybe a 5-10 minute break, let everybody wet their whistle?
Yeah, that would be a great idea. Thank you. We will take a 10-minute break. All right, our session is it's back in, and we've had a good start, and I want to thank the city staff and everyone, Melanie Trexler, Mr. Hargrove, for putting all this data together, each department head putting all this data together, and it's a lot of work, hours and hours and hours of work, so I want to thank them for that, and thank them for the presentation so far. And now I'll turn to someone who really hadn't been very busy, nothing really going on in his department. I haven't had to answer any questions about what was going on there or anything like that, so I'll be interested in your talk. So, Thomas Lloyd, Development Services Director, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So as the mayor said, we've certainly been pretty busy here recently. The biggest thing that we're asking for in this budget, other than just our typical expenses, is for an additional position. And I think, in my conversations with the city manager, we've been interested in a planner 1 or a planner technician, maybe a planner 2, just depending on the quality of the applicants that we would get for that. But I'll go into why it's necessary. I'm just going to read through some of the upcoming developments that are potentially, on the table, that have not gone through the site plan approval process yet, but that I anticipate them going through the process. So there's Oakton or Pineton, whatever they end up calling it there beside the hammocks. That's 42 units. There's also Turtle Bay, which is behind Murphy's, and that could be in the ETJ. It could be annexed into the city. We're still awaiting that. Either way, this department has to serve them. We have to serve them from a planning perspective. We have to serve them from a building inspections perspective. And Turtle Bay would be 111 units. There's also the Indigo track. I think everybody's pretty aware of the amount of units that we could have there, but I'll say it anyways. It could be either 1,532 units, or it could be 550 units. So that's a lot of upcoming development potentially there. However, it ends up shaking out. There's also Oakton. It's 42 units. They are wanting to go under the existing R10 zoning. And then there's the cottages at Price's Creek, Phase 2. So I'm not even talking about Phase 3 yet, but Phase 2 is 48 townhome units. There's Highland Park, which is the final plat has been approved, or has not been approved for that. They're still doing a lot of their infrastructure, but that's 20 units. The Haven has recently been approved from a final plat standpoint. They're starting construction on that right now. That's 8 units. There's the Ferry Road property, and at that property, I haven't seen a number of units yet, but their intention at the time, right now, is to develop it at R10 density. So that's 100 acres. It would probably be similar in scale to what the Landing or what Harbor Oaks is currently. And the last one I have is Jones Creek Phase 3. There is additional land there between, West St. George and West Street. We're probably looking at about 30 to 35 units there. And then other than that, obviously there's the Southport Crossing commercial out parcels. So my point in reading all this out is that all of these approvals, whether it's as simple as, a zoning permit for each structure that is built, or a more complicated subdivision plat, all of this is going to take staff time and resources. And that is on top of everything else that we're already doing when it comes to answering everyday questions from, realtors, citizens, and just reviewing all of our other permits that we're issuing. So I think having an additional staff member is definitely needed. Some might make the comment that it was probably needed last year. But we're definitely to a tipping point with all these developments where we need somebody else. And quite frankly, if all these developments get approved, we're going to need another building inspector also. Kylie is doing an excellent job right now, and he's getting all of his certifications. He recently got his level 1 plumbing certification. He's taken both of his mechanical classes as well as his electrical class, and he's going to be going and getting all his level 2s, next year. But at the end of the day, we do have Wayne on a part-time basis. But if some of these developments happen, we're going to need help. And Osprey Landing, I mean, I didn't mention that, but that's an additional 196 units. So we're going to have a lot of zoning permits, a lot of building permits, a lot of trade permits moving forward, and we will certainly need help. That's really my biggest ask in this budget. Other than that, there's obviously travel and training. Kylie is going to continue to be taking those certification classes as a building inspector. He'll be doing his level 2s next year, which there's not as many options. Luckily, he was able to take courses at Cape Fear for the level 1 certification, so we didn't have to spend money on on travel and on hotel rooms. But once you get to the higher level courses, they're not a dime a dozen like level 1s are. You have to go to different areas in order to get those. My permitting tech and my code enforcement officer did a great job going to the School of Government courses virtually, because due to the pandemic they weren't able to go in person. But they did get those certifications. But what happens when you get certifications? Well, you have to maintain those certifications with continuous education credits. So I do anticipate them going to some conferences as a CZO to maintain those credits. As well as myself, I have to do all that too for floodplain, CZO, and everything else. And I'm trying to get my AICP, so that'll be more credits that I have to look forward to once I get that. Other than that, there really aren't any big ask. I mean, I would still like to start working on the Camo land use plan update, but it really just kind of depends on how this next year washes out with all these developments and everything else. I think it's important. It's something that we need to get started on, just because what we did before with the UDO update is a Band-Aid, and we definitely need to start that process as well. And there's also been discussion about historic preservation districts and all that as well. And I think that's very important. But what's also important to note is if we're going to have that and we're going to have a commission, we do need to have appropriate level of staffing to be able to administer those regulations. So that's really all I have. I am happy to answer additional questions.
Thomas, I'm sorry.
I'd like to hop in here real quick. And the CZO, for y'all that don't know what that is, that's a certified zoning official. And Tori and Chris were able to obtain that designation this past year. I do want to just let everybody know that Dory Dutton, our city clerk, also has a planning background. And quite frankly, without her jumping in and helping out some, and I help out where I can, Thomas, to do this all by himself has been just about near impossible. So there is a need there. And if he couldn't rely on Dory or myself, especially with the subcommittee meetings we have going on right now, the level of service that has been come to be expected of Southport would not be there. So I just wanted to reiterate that point.
Thomas, if you took out all the indigo, whatever indigo might look like, just take that off the board, and all those other developments that you have, is there a total number of residential units? If you don't have it right now, you can give it to me later.
I can give it to you later.
Okay.
What I will say about those other developments is those are either by right I mean, those are the units that they can do by right, or it's a down zoning. So in the case of Ferry Road, currently it's business district and multifamily, but if they go down to R10, that'll be a down zoning.
Oh, I'm not suggesting that we're going to, one way or the other.
Oh, for sure.
remove
I
it.
just wanted
I just
to-
want to know how many, what does our whole thing look like? Because the people who came before you talking, their budget in the future is going to be impacted by all of this stuff. So is it 500, 1,000? What is it that it looks like? So, okay. Thank you.
Obviously, all that's not going to happen overnight. It'll be more gradual, but it's stuff that's coming.
Thomas, can you, I need education here. What is Planner 1, Planner 2 level?
Sure. So there's different, designations of people in the planning profession. What you would probably start out with is a planning technician. Planning technicians have a little less level of responsibility and more supervision. But a lot of people that, first come out of college or maybe just have an associate's degree but don't have a 4-year degree are typically planning technicians. And they do more routine stuff like zoning permits. They don't get as involved in all of the, whether it's UDO amendments or zoning amendments. They help with that, but typically they're doing kind of the lower level everyday stuff, answering phones, being a resource for folks. Then there's like a planner 1 or an assistant planner is typically how that's geared. And that's somebody that is pretty much an entry-level planner. They may have gone to, gotten their bachelor's in geography or their bachelor's in planning. They may have a master's degree. It just kind of depends. Your planner 2 is typically somebody that has 3 to 5 years experience. So they have the education as well as the the experience. They have the skills. They've been in it a while. And then, above that, typically you have a senior planner or a, planning director or a planning manager in bigger cities. Good. I think more than anything, having a planner 1 or a planner 2 would be extremely helpful, because that's somebody who can do some of these higher level things. They can also be there as a resource to help, to help answer just all the general questions. And our staff does a great job at that now. Our permitting tech, Tori, she knows everything. But there's a lot of, I would say, higher level things that a planner 1 or a planner 2 could do, whether it's helping with rezonings, helping with text amendments, helping with site plan approvals and subdivisions. That would certainly be helpful, or helping with, text amendments. The UDO is a living document. If we had more time freed up to actually continue making it a living document, there would be a lot more updates as well if we had additional resources. Not at this time, but I think this next budget year, we could probably get by with what we have. But if some of these developments happen, and you also have to understand, just because they go through the approval process, if you're doing a preliminary plat, at a minimum, that's going to take 6 to 8 months. That's at a minimum. So my thoughts are that, they would go through the approval process, they would start doing the engineering and everything else, and that's going to take a year or two. So my thoughts are that we'll probably need one next year for all of this as these continue to go through the approval processes.
Strickland is still willing to do some fill-in.
He is, and he's actually been doing that for us as Kylie has been taking courses. and as needed for level 2 and 3 inspections, because we do have to have a level 2 and 3 inspector. We also have Bill Bruce, who is the retired building inspector from Bald Head Island. Karen probably knows him. He's also filling in for us as well as needed. But I don't think Bill's planning on, working part-time much longer. I think, his wife's kind of getting on him to retire for good. But he is willing to help us, for now.
Hi,
When
I
we
would
do
like to
hire
take
a
a quick.
planner, let's hire somebody that could jump right in and don't have to go to school for 2 years.
Can
Yeah, go ahead.
Can I play off that? I would like us to consider hiring a senior planner. I think that the pressures on our community that we're all aware of from a developmental standpoint warrants us making that kind of investment. And I would like to see us come back to the budget and ask for a senior planner, because that money is something that will be well spent. The other thing, Thomas, that I would ask for me is that if you could participate in the rate committee meeting on the 17th, and we can review your rates and that sort of thing, so that it may be that you find the money there.
Excuse me, when you're trying to speak, would you please use your microphone? Thank you. There's people watching at home.
What will the rate committee be considering?
Well, the rate committee initially is going to be looking at the water sewer rates. It'll be our 3-month review of that, the new rates. And then, just like I asked Parks and Recs, asked planning, and then probably the police, ask them to come with their rates. We should reevaluate the rates every year or so.
Especially in terms of development.
Correct.
We can certainly review that. I mean, the intention of our department is to be, self-sufficient, and that development is paying for it, not the citizens. So I think that's a great idea to review that annually.
So just as an FYI, if we did go with the senior planner, if that's the direction that the board wanted to move, you're probably looking at a salary range of $80,000 to $90,000 and a benefits package with taxes and retirement and all that good stuff around $40,000 to $45,000. So what we have here is a planner 1 position, an entry-level position. You can see that position breakdown behind that sheet. That would not correspond to a senior planner, although you can write those numbers down and almost be pretty accurate with it, that it would be $80,000 to $90,000 and then $45,000 worth of benefits, taxes, and that sort of thing.
Yeah, we can certainly look at some different ranges in the area as well and get some comparisons on what that might look like.
As an FYI, one of our regional municipalities in the area is currently advertising for a senior level planner, and that salary range runs from $90,000 to $120,000. So it's just not someone you're looking for, someone with a very specific skill set. It's not an easy position to fill, so please be aware of that.
I think it sounds like a planner 2 level might make more sense for us, which is kind of in between, I guess, what we're talking about.
And it might be easier to find that. I mean, John, you know how that is with your experience in the past, and that could be certainly somebody that can grow into some of those further skills, but can still do a lot of the things that we need help with right now.
I'll ask this of the manager. Is the overtime budget sufficient to fill the gap because it's going to be a while before we hire anybody? And is that enough money, considering all the things that the current staff is going to be confronting?
I'm comfortable with it at this point.
Is there a mechanism to be able to supplement that during the year if we had to?
Yes, the budget is a lot like the UDO in the fact that it's a living document. It's not written in stone.
I thought you were going to say confusing.
Do what?
I thought you were going to say confusing.
Well, it can be that as well. But it's a living document, and just because this is a proposed budget doesn't mean that at the end of the year it's going to be exactly on the money. It might be a little over, it might be a little less. It's basically a spending guide for the year, and that's why, you know, in the state of North Carolina, it requires at the beginning of the year a balanced budget, and when we close it out, it has to be a balanced budget. So we'll move money around within the acceptable funds to balance that out, and have to move a little bit of money here and there. So it is a guide. It's not etched in stone. So yes, if we had to make accommodation for that, there is a mechanism for that.
And also, Rich, keep in mind you've got, in addition to the overtime, you've got part-time employees, and you've also got down under other services some money there for, in the notes it says in case there's building inspection services in case the part-time building inspector is not available.
Thanks for
There's
pointing-
several
thanks-
pots
thanks
of
for
money
pointing
in
that out.
there, so.
Any other questions or comments? Okay. Thank you, Mr. Lloyd. You can go take a break now because I know you don't have much to do. And thank you for that great assessment of all those projects. That was very helpful.
Okay, so right now, Mr. Mayor, we are bumping up against lunchtime. We're actually making great time on this. So when there's supposed to be lunch delivered here in just the next few minutes, we can either jump in and let Kate Marshall do Animal Protective Services and then take our lunch break. But what I would like to do is, since we are running ahead of schedule and I'm fully aware that some of our members have a 3 o'clock meeting this afternoon, I'd like to move Miss Melanie Trexler from tomorrow to today to go over administration, if everybody's okay with that, to give us a little bit more time at the end of tomorrow's meeting to maybe hash out some of these concerns between a senior planner, a planner 2, firefighter positions, and some of the other asks that we have. Is that acceptable to everyone? Okay, so Miss Kate Marshall, are you ready?
Good morning. Good morning. Did everybody find it? Good to go? Okay. So I started in 2018, Animal Protective Services. At that time, they separated it from the police department and made it the own position. So my first week of work was Hurricane Florence. So that's how I was initiated into Southport. So at that time, it was separated out, and I became my own department. And since that time, kind of just built it from the ground up. So that's where we are. This is the first year that I've been contemplating a way to bring on an on-call part-time person. Right now, I basically, if I'm in town and available, whenever the phone rings, I answer it. Because if generally the police department, they don't call me unless it's an emergency. So I've been answering all those calls so I was contemplating somehow maybe this year if I could do a volunteer on-call stipend, somehow to get at least once a month someone that would take call for me so I don't have to answer my phone. Takes a certain skill set, and it just recently became that someone that I've been working with at events that I think could fill this position. So that number is on there. It hasn't been vetted out completely because it would probably have to be someone that we would have to be covered on workman's comp and that. So that number is just arbitrary right now. That's basically how I started in animal welfare. It's an on-call basis with the SPCA. So you go on call. If there's a call, then you respond to it. Basically similar to how the fire department would do it. So that number's there. That's never been there before. Basically, then the only other thing is this year I was finally able to find a software program that's built specifically for small municipalities so I could do some kind of a tracking on calls. Right now everything is just internal documents that I've created. There's really no way to track it. Everything has to be taken separately and put on a spreadsheet. So that number is in there this year, and that's $2,000. Other than that, everything's pretty straightforward and what I need and in my budget.
Kate, how are you compensated for all the weekends? Because I know I see you on the weekends a lot doing your work. So how does that work?
I'm on salary. So it's part of my salary. There's no extra compensation for it. Balance my hours, so if I'm come in on a Saturday or Sunday and it's slow during the week, then I can leave early. I kind of just Gordon allows me to adjust my schedule as such.
Comp time? You do comp time? No,
not really comp time. It's just I can adjust my hours. So if I worked 4 hours on Saturday, then I can leave 4 hours early today. That kind of call dependent.
Well, I definitely think we ought to figure out a way that you can have at least 1 weekend a month that you're not on call.
I did it to myself because the police department is also short-staffed. So if those guys are in a bind, if there's an animal, they do a welfare check and there was some dogs left behind, they really are at a loss. The county can't come into Southport because we have our own animal welfare ordinance, and they can't enforce our ordinance. So it's very tough. And plus, there's one person on call on the weekends and at night for the entire county. They really just don't have the time to do it. So if it's a real emergency, the guys are very good, and girls, about letting me know when they call it's an emergency. And then this time of year, of course, we get the alligators and swimming pools, and we can call the district biologist, which again is one person for 9 counties. So he's not always available, and I've got the equipment and was trained now to do it. So it's kind of that way. But a lot of it I took on myself. I could have just not answered the phone, but that's not who I am. So.
So I have a question, I guess. Is this working? Hello. Question for Gordon or Melanie. It looks like the $1,200 for the part-time is not included in the proposed budget. Is that correct?
By accident only. So I'll fix that.
Thank you.
Do you have somebody in mind that would be qualified right now to do that part-time work?
Yes, actually, there's an individual that has been showing up on almost all of my community events. He shows up and helps, and I know him from River Road Animal Hospital. That's where I take most of my emergency calls. He's worked with me there. He's a great animal handler, dog training skills. So, and he already has on call twice a month anyway at River Road, so he stays in town those weekends. So, I mean, I've not approached him, but in my mind, that's probably where I would start.
And Kate, you at all these other events and like Nature Fest, and so that's been so beneficial for the community, and so thank you for that as well. And thank you for helping out here. You really are just more than just animal protection services. You've been a big help to anyone who needs it for the city, so thank you. Thank you so much. So is this the time now we'll take our break, and we will start back, I guess, in 45 minutes. All right.
Testing. Testing.
right, thank y'all, and welcome back to our budget workshop. I would like to, we do have one thing we need to do in terms of the agenda. We need to amend it so we can have the Finance Department give their report this afternoon. So I'll entertain a motion to amend the agenda with the Finance Department presentation.
So,
Mayor Pro Tem and then Alderman Lombardi. Any further discussion? All in favor? Okay. Agenda amended. Thank you. Motion carried. All right. Ms. Trexler, if you would like to begin our discussion on finance.
Has everyone found that particular section in your budget package? If you have, we'll go ahead and proceed. We're going to start with Melanie. I believe you said board finance. Board finance, which is
The board is general government, and it's 10-00-4110.
General government.
That's right.
Is
It
the
is
topic.
behind your revenues, a few sheets. Is everybody with? Can you hear me? Can you hear me? It's on. Is it? You hear me fine. Can you can is it coming through the mic? Hello? Hello? There we go. Is that working, Elena? Bringing me another one.
Hello? Hello?
Testing, testing, nothing. It's just my voice. It's me.
I think something's down, Randy, because I'm hitting this.
Hello?
Testing, testing,
Testing, testing. Is it coming through the speaker?
Can I?
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
testing, testing, testing. Randy, do you hear it through through the headphones? Testing, testing, testing. Testing, testing, testing. It's the antennas. They've been moved around too much. Testing.
Can you hear me there? Can you hear me? No. Can you hear me?
Carbs. Too many carbs. Test, test, test. Okay. All right. Okay, I'm Melanie Trexler. I am the finance director for the city of Southport. Been here, December will be 8 years. Sometimes I feel like I haven't been here long enough. And I apologize that these budget work pages are not numbered, but we will try to number those next time. Makes it a little hard to flip pages. So we'll start with the board budget. Not a whole lot changed in this budget. The board's salaries or stipends are charged between three funds: our general fund, our water sewer fund, and our electric fund, kind of broke down equally, okay? So that's reflective of only a third of what we attribute to your positions. Professional fees is usually our attorney fees, and accounting, our audit fees should stay probably relatively about the same, maybe. We have a new attorney on board, so we'll, kind of kept that budget kind of even from last year. Weather tower, I've kept that at the same. I know we've had some funds that we raised, but I don't think we're quite there yet as far as trying to replace the weather tower. We also have in this budget our regular donations to the Southport Elementary School of $10,000 and $2,000 to Brunswick Family Services. We've budgeted the same for election expenses for next year. Do we have election for next year? I guess we do. Yeah. So November of '23 will be the next election. So actually, I could make that zero for this up budget. I removed the contingency line there out of our current budget. Contingency is usually just the excess number that we have over, available for redistributing among if we need it during the year, of course, and we come back to the board for that. So I'll entertain any questions for the board budget.
We incurred
Does the
potential.
weather tower, would this complete whatever we need for that? Would we then be able to go forward with getting it back in shape?
I really cannot answer that question. I don't think that that's enough, right?
We're in the process of getting a few more pledge donations, and then we should be ready to go for this year.
Right. So if I remember correctly, the $19,740 is what we had raised, and so we only budgeted for the amount that we had raised in funds. So I think the whole thing was to raise enough money to pay for that outside of, our donations were to fund
Correct.
that whole project.
Plus the insurance money.
Right, less the insurance money. So once we've raised enough money, we'll come back to the board with a budget amendment and appropriate the additional money that we raised from donations.
Right.
Because I think the overall budget was around $65,000 to replace that weather
Correct.
tower. So
And how
until we
close are
raise
we?
all of that.
How close are we now? With the pledges as well as what's already come in?
We're very, very close because we have someone that will, once these other pledges are in, someone is willing to write the balance. So we're very close.
We got an additional fee that I'm not sure where it fits into this whole book for the lawyer, our special lawyer for the Indigo project, and that cost will be spread over this fiscal year and the next fiscal year, I assume. Where does that line go?
Well, actually, it should be in line 4,400 where it says contracted services. I don't know how much additional money we need for that, so we might need to up that line.
Well, I don't know that we have a dollar amount exactly, but I know what the upper limit was estimated at, and that was 100,000.
100,000.
Yeah, but that doesn't mean we're going to spend that much money. He threw that number out as the high end, as I remember the conversation.
Don't we have money in the planning budget for that or something? Am I making that up?
We were just there.
You're referring to Mr. Terrell?
Yes.
I don't think it does have enough in there for that.
We have 15,000 in planning for the development consultant. I guess that's not the attorney, that's the fiscal impact analysis, I think, that we're doing.
Right, for contracted services on our development service department, we only have $31,500 total. So we could up that budget there for this attorney, or we can put it back in the board budget, whichever. It really doesn't matter because it's all general fund, but yeah, we might need to up.
It's
that
immaterial to
dollar
me where
amount.
it goes. I just want to make sure that we have something there that designates that we've kind of encumbered some money that if we don't use it, we can use it for something else.
Okay. We'll come up with a dollar amount to put in there.
So yeah, we'll take some money and we'll encumber it for that attorney fees, but part of our development agreement is that we're moving forward is trying to get the developer to assume that cost. So we'll see how that works out, but we really need to have that in the budget, so we'll put some more money into it.
Okay, so let's turn a couple pages over to the admin budget. Yes, 4120. Yeah, 1001, 4120 is the admin budget. It's just a couple of pages behind the board budget there. So this budget worksheet is a workbook out of Excel, and these cells are not protected. We have all the staff has been working in the same work budget. So it's very easy to overwrite or make mistakes in Excel, if any of you have ever worked in Excel. So when I put my eyes on this today, I looked at that very first line where it says full-time employees, and the estimated 12-month budget is $133,000, but yet I've requested only around $85,000. So I went back and started looking. The 8-month actual number column there for $93,968 should have only been $53,566. So the 2022 budget was actually maybe a little more than what it should have been. So I really feel comfortable that my requested budget amount of $85,000 there is enough. The personnel in the administration budget is Gordon, city manager, Dory, the clerk, and our deputy clerk, Tanya Shannon, are the 3 employees that are to be in that budget. In previous years, we have had other people in that budget. I think even Kate Marshall's salary was in admin at one time, maybe even code enforcement. So the budget number may have been over budgeted for that line for 2022. But for this upcoming year, it is only those 3 people. And their annual salaries are also divided among the 3 funds, our general fund, our electric fund, and our water fund equally. So if you take that 84 times 3, that total department is much, much larger than, of course, that number. So there's not much change in this budget. Down on emergency preparedness line, 3,400, underneath utilities, is usually our planning for hurricanes. But for the last couple of years, this line item has been used for COVID expenditures. You know, we were given $80,000 by the state through the county to offset any of our COVID expenditures. And last year, I think we spent around $42,000 of our COVID money. So this past year, we've still had COVID expenses being charged to that account. I would still like to ask for $52,500 for emergency preparedness. It's just a small amount to even begin to think about a hurricane, but you know, it does help in starting to prepare the emergency operations center for hurricanes.
I'm sorry, could you help me understand the $622,000 for 21? What was that?
I'll have to look back and see what that was. That looks really strange.
It does look very strange. Like, how do we spend so much money in 2021?
I don't. Just taking a wild guess, it may have included some FEMA reimbursement money or something.
Well, this was probably where we were capturing some of the hurricane that actually happened. Isaias was probably some of the hurricane expenditures as we were going through. That was probably charged to that line item.
So
And then we got reimbursed, of course. This is just the expenditures. This is not revenue here. This is expenditures. So in 2021, we did have a hurricane that we were having some expenditures for. So some of that is probably the EOC, probably debris that was charged.
I guess
to that
I look
line.
at the word preparedness, I think of that as
Yeah.
before the event, and then
Yep.
there's the hurricane expenses, which is during the event.
Right, so this was probably both.
A combination of those two?
Yes.
Okay.
Mhm.
Melanie, on the debt service for administration,
Yes,
the notes say that's for the annual payments for the fire station.
that's right. We split that fire.
We split that with fire, is that why they've?
That's right.
Fire
And this is,
department,
that
okay,
is for the actual building, the fire department building.
okay.
Yes.
Because
Mhm.
there's 125,000 in the fire department budget, so it's split between those two.
That's right. Are there any questions for administration budget?
Are you going to talk about the HR position?
Yes, I
In
am,
this.
and that is in the next budget, which is the finance department budget. So some years ago, HR was under the administration, and I think it was before Kerry McDuffie left as city manager. He moved that position to under my supervision in the finance department. And since then, I mean, it's takes up a good bit of my time to help in that department. You know, staff has increased a good amount, and our current payroll specialist is been with the city a very long time. She does a great job with our payroll, and she tries to help people in our human resources area. And we just need some additional help. We have brought on third-party processing, and that started in January, which has been it was not as helpful as I had hoped it would be. So we're looking for another vendor to replace the one that we're currently with. They could not prepare the orbit report as we needed to be uploaded seamlessly. And they also had struggled with helping import the general ledger, journal entries for the payroll. So it's been a bit of a struggle, but I have found another vendor that several of our local cities are using. It's called Paylocity. Leland uses it and is very, very happy with it. Has even said that I could come and they would even show it to me, hand-holding kind of event there. So I look forward to doing that. But in our HR, I envision an HR director being more programmatic in setting up maybe trainings. A HR person would develop a more direct, easier understood personnel policy, help guide people as they're going through job training, helping our people with ongoing job trainings. So we're kind of missing a lot of things that an HR director would do. And I'm going to ask the city manager to say something about HR.
In your budget package, you're going to see the initiative request form for the HR director. And I know you all can read, but I'm going to read this because this is what I envision the HR director doing, is the director will direct all human resource functions by focusing efforts on performance management and benefit support to employees, providing oversight of the human resource department, providing advice related to the personnel ordinance, and ensuring compliance with federal, state, and local policy and regulations. The director oversees the budget and manages the department personnel. The director directs and participates in tasks in the functional areas of employee relations, classification, recruitment, and other personnel issues and problems, and provides consultation. Since I've been here, Melanie has performed this function as the HR director, and in my estimation, I think this is too much to ask of her to be our finance director and our HR director. And it's really important to the success of our organization that Melanie can spend her time focused on our finance department. She has several goals as part of her personal objectives through our performance appraisal plan that she has set forth for herself in accomplishing to make our budgeting process, our finance department accountable, more accountable than it already is, and actually she's striving to make our finance department to realize that we're excellent in what we do. I'll let her provide that information there, but I think it's time for these two functions to be separated in order for us to drive more an efficient and high-performing organization.
Melanie, I would say that y'all have done a great job. Between Dory and you, my onboarding was pretty awesome. So from that perspective, that was great. I think any organization that has employees must have HR and have someone dedicated to it. So I am all in favor on this. I think this is a big idea, but I do think you've done a great job doing many jobs. So thank you.
I also think that this is essential, especially as we've moved toward a well-defined performance evaluation system. plus the benefits packages. You know, I didn't know until about 25 years ago when a friend of mine's daughter graduated from college and her major was human resources. This is a very definite skill that requires, and we've reached the point in this city where we need that. And we don't
Yes.
need you having to do it.
Right, yes. So when I was hired 7.5 years ago, I think there was like 42 full-time people, and we are now up to 61 or 2 full-time people. So our full-time staff really needs an HR director, yes. Yes, so in the finance department, my goal is to have all of our employees in the finance department to be more qualified, trained as governmental finance people, to understand governmental accounting, to understand the overall picture. I just feel like you can do a better job for finance, for audit, for our board, for our citizens, if everyone has a broader understanding of governmental accounting. So I offer our staff training to go to classes, to learn more, to be more familiar, to understand what we all do. And for myself, I do the same. Of course, as a CPA, I'm required to continue to do continuing education. But I also want to set up dashboards to make reviewing numbers easier, quicker, and because lots of people are more visual thinkers than just looking at a column of numbers. So that's part of the goals. And to make the whole budgeting process easier, there's software out there I'm been looking at to purchase. We also have more requirements from audit. We have to keep track of now every lease is now a debt. And we took on leasing program with Enterprise, and now every single automobile is a separate debt. So I have to come up with a method of keeping up with every single lease that we have as a separate debt. So it's going to be quite a challenge. So, I'm looking at software for that. It's called Debt Book, and that's going to be probably $12,000 just on itself. And plus, the city's taking on more debt too with a $30 million loan for, our water and sewer infrastructure. And hopefully there'll be some other debt associated with the other water sewer projects to repair our infrastructure. So there's a lot coming around. So
One other question regarding this HR position, and maybe this is for Gordon. Gordon, do you envision this department being one person?
At this point, we have a human resources tech, so I would anticipate that there would be a HR director and then a technician at this point.
Where is the money budgeted for the HR person, the HR director?
it's in the requested column, in the proposed column. Yes. Right.
Okay. Are you sure?
Yes, I know it seems low, but it's also stretched out across 3 departments. 3 funds.
Indicated anywhere that it's for 3 departments? That's what confuses me sometimes. On that page, does it say this is spread over 3 departments?
If you look at the explanation page, it's a third to electric, water, sewer, and general fund. So that's It's not really 3 departments, it's the 3 funds. So the board, the admin, and the finance department is spread among the 3 funds. The only other department that has allocation is our street department. When Tom comes to talk with Public Works, street department is divided between basically streets and Powell bill, well, not Powell bill, but street department, water and sewer and electric. 60% of street department salaries goes to water and sewer, and 40% stays in the general fund under streets, which would be the maintenance and cleaning of our streets.
Can I just go back just a second? So the new employee, the HR director, for salary, benefits, yada, yada, $60,000?
It's around 75 is what I had budgeted.
So that's just for the salary
Yes.
and not for the benefits, okay.
Yeah, there's a separate page for that, on that, smaller. The smaller page in the very front there, yeah, it should be a little bit further. Yeah, that should be it, the one that you have.
I'll review these numbers because just looking at this, some of this does look a little bit low. Group health looks a little off on that line. I spend most of my time focusing on everybody else's budget but these 3. But I'm pretty sure the salary line is including an extra person for the HR.
So these other initiative requests, part-time city engineer and then city engineer, what are those within this budget?
No, they'll be in the Public Works budget. They're actually, the engineer, I think, is mainly in the water and sewer. But I think Gordon may have wanted to talk about it now, or you want to wait?
Is this going to be Tom?
Yeah, we'll talk about it when we get to Tom's portion.
Is there any other questions for me on these 3 budgets?
The only question I had is LGERS. I don't know what that acronym stands for, but why is some retirement that and some not?
All of it's the local government employees retirement system is what that stands for. But yes, everyone is under that. Yeah, except for the law enforcement, and then it's called LEO. Yeah. It's just an acronym. Yeah, but everyone has that same retirement, yep. I would like to say that we went with a third party to help us negotiate our medical insurance with the league. A legacy benefit services has helped us for the last 2 years. And this year they were able to get the league to come down another 2% on our health insurance. So I think that's a big plus for us this year. That we're not looking at an increase, but an actual 2% reduction.
And that's
in
with
our
the same
health
level of
insurance.
benefits?
Yes,
That
same level.
is amazing.
Nothing has changes. Right.
When is our open enrollment on that?
It's now. It's
Okay.
now. They were actually here last week to talk to all the employees.
We qualify for that as well, right?
Yes. Right, if you pay for it.
And Alderman Carroll, if you're interested in that, you need to see Melanie ASAP. That'd be very proactive on that.
Right. I think that what helps our insurance rating with the league is that all new employees are required to go to our higher deductible HSA program, and that has helped in keeping our rates low and our claims, in check. It is a very good program, and I want to thank the board for the contributions that you make toward the participants' HSA. It is a little difficult when you hire someone and they don't have that money already accumulated in their health savings account. So I would like to ask that we upload people's HSA with some amount in the beginning rather than weekly, so maybe like in the 1st of July, we upload their accounts with $500 instead of the $96.46 biweekly that we're currently doing. That way, if they have an event or need to purchase a couple $100 worth of medicine out of their HSA before meeting that deductible, they have that money. So I know it's a little risky if we lose someone before, they've actually kind of earned their amount, that we might lose a little bit, but I think it would be beneficial. I think that's the largest complaint that we have about our HSA program.
I think it's a very compassionate approach, and also maybe it'll help keep people.
Right. Yeah.
It just caught my eye. You have a remodeled front reception area to gain 2 offices, and there's no money for it.
Actually, I did slip it on line 5100. I only estimated $15,000 on the finance budget. 100240.
Oh, capital L, oh, okay.
Yeah, I think I slipped it in there. Oh, did I put it? Yeah, I may have.
It just caught my eye, so that's why.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I put it on the wrong line. That's what the problem is. So that should go up.
Excuse me.
So, yeah, the goal for the front office area is to make use of that huge lobby we have, remodel up front, and maybe gain a small conference room and 2 more offices. We haven't really come up with a design, nor have we actually gotten an estimate of what it would cost. So I'm just kind of shooting from the hip on that with the $15,000.
One of the problems is that we are at a premium for office space. We are trying to figure out where to put employees at now, so we've just run out of room. So that's why we need to do something. We were looking at some other remodels or renovations to the bullpen area on the first floor there at City Hall, and it's just not going to be possible. If you make multiple offices there, they're going to basically be closets. So it's not a very, we can't do it.
What's the square footage of our building? Do I need to take a tape over there?
Yes.
I'd be glad to move my office to the groom's room.
There you go.
The groom's room here is empty.
That room is not empty. Please, you have no idea what trouble we're having right now with that issue. So that room is not empty. That's where the audiovisual equipment goes.
I'll
and
share it
other
with the
things.
equipment.
Let me just be perfectly clear. She's not moving.
Oh, sorry. Oh, shucks. Okay.
Does anyone have any questions for Melanie?
wasn't really prepared to talk today. I thought I was tomorrow last, but it's okay. We'll get it done.
So if not, that's really what we've got for today. Tomorrow, we will finish up with our police department and our public works department. And then when we're done with those two presenters, we will go in and talk about our revenue projections. And then we'll talk about where we're at with our proposed budget, how short we are to balancing that. And then we will, well, I'm sorry, Randy, you're there tomorrow as well. As a matter of fact, if you're ready to go now, I'm sure the mayor will make an amendment to the budget, and we can just go ahead and knock you out this afternoon. Okay. So we'll do those three departments, and then we'll talk about some revenue projections. And like I said, we'll talk about the shortfall in balancing that budget and what we need to do as far as a tax increase with fund balance. And we'll talk more at length tomorrow on that. So that's really all we have for today, unless y'all have any questions for us.
Questions for the city manager or anything that we've done today? Any comments that anyone would like to make before we adjourn? Okay. I'll entertain a motion. Mr. Lombardi, and second by Alderman Allen. All in favor? Okay, meeting adjourned. Thank you.